historians, the people of pre-colonial Puerto Rico did not disappear entirely as previously believed. Historians believed the indigenous tribe called the Taínos were completely eradicated after Europeans arrived to the island during the 15th century. But now that's not the case. Researchers have found 3 genomes from ancient skeletons living in the DNA strands of living Puerto Ricans. With me now to explain this important discovery is one of the geneticists on the project, Maria Nieves Colon. Good to see you, Maria.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I'm fascinated by this story. I'd always been told, I have family from Haiti, I had always been told that the Taínos were completely eradicated after Europeans arrived to the Caribbean islands. So explain to our audience why these results are so important to you, and of course to not just the people of Puerto Rico, but all the people in the Caribbean who would have had Taínos living on some of those islands.
Yeah, this is a very common story, actually, that we hear throughout the Caribbean. And it stems from interpretations of the writings that European colonizers left behind. They talk about people on these islands being wiped out or dying out pretty quickly after colonization. But that idea kind of bumps up against oral histories and stories that people tell on the islands of having, for instance, an indigenous great-grandmother or carrying cultural traditions that have a native origin into the present. So what our study,
Go ahead.
What our study looked at was the genomes of the ancient population to try to understand whether or not there was some genetic continuity that went hand in hand with the cultural continuity that we also see.
And you've spent 10 years doing that, working on this research, which is remarkable. So what are some of the biggest discoveries you were able to make over the course of your research?
Yeah, so we found 2 main things with our study. We looked at the genetics of about 124 ancient people that lived in Puerto Rico, at least 1,000 to 600 years before European contact. And we found first that there was a genetic connection between these ancient people and present-day indigenous communities in the Amazon, which suggests that it was Amazonian people who initially kind of peopled the islands of the Caribbean. And we've also found there was a partial genetic continuity between them and present-day Puerto Ricans. And I say partial because we did also find a lot of genetic diversity that was present in the past that isn't present today. So clearly there was a decline. But the fact that we found 3 sequences that persisted into the present day suggests that this wasn't a complete genetic extinction.
That's fascinating, and I had always long wondered where the Taíno actually came from. So the idea or the hypothesis that they originated in what is present-day Brazil is also really, really interesting. Did the climate in Puerto Rico and in the Caribbean make it difficult to analyze the DNA?
Yeah, well, that's part of the reason why it took so long. So the same conditions that make the Caribbean a beautiful place for vacation, the warmth and the humidity, make it possibly the worst place for DNA preservation. So ancient DNA in general is always degraded and fragmented because we're working with genetic material that has been in bones or teeth for thousands, sometimes hundreds of years. And when it's really hot, that degradation just becomes faster. So in order to deal with those issues, we had to work in extremely clean conditions. So we would take the skeletal remains and we would analyze them in a clean lab, and then we would wear these spacesuits that sort of protect the samples from our own skin and hair so we don't contaminate the samples. And we also have to use cutting-edge technology for sequencing these genomes. So for determining the A's, T's, and C's, we have to use these very large and expensive machines. And that kind of technology just wasn't available 10 years ago. So that's part of the reason why it took us such a long time to do.
And, you know, so the other thing that I'm sort of intrigued by is modern day humans have been on this planet a relatively short period of time when you compare the age of the planet and you compare the age of...
This is an interview on YouTube about the DNA from the island of Borinquen that this young lady been doing a study on. Tariq got the nerves to call Taino $5 Indians that I hope this young lady will sue him for defamation because she did 10 years of her life in this project, and she's a well-educated young lady. And for him to be saying $5 Taino, I wish this lady will sue him. And this lady been on Twitter since 2019 explaining this. So Tariq, Mr. Twitter man, he should know this if he's interested in history. But he doesn't know even his history. So I hope they sue him for defamation for calling Taino $5 Indians and spreading more misinformation like the colonizer.